sa applicants. Okay? Now, what about Mr. Boston? So, this is, by the way, wait, because in Manila, I usually do PowerPoint presentation for this, but for this one here in dagupan, wala kasing color coding yung names ng examiners. So, there are 3 labels, okay? Red, white, and blue. So, Boston is red because he is a bear examiner. So, when I say red, meaning negative, okay, take note of that. White, fair enough. If you deserve to pass the exam, you'll make it. If you don't deserve, you'll likely fail. Now, the third color, blue, meaning a blessing examiner. Okay? So red, Boston is a red examiner, as I've mentioned. Now, what can I say about Boston? One thing I noticed when he asks questions, he would usually ask intelligent questions, okay? And then he is not a by-the-book examiner. Meaning, the questions he's going to ask are based on your answers, okay? And he is fond of asking conceptual and not the personal ones. Now, what is your clue that you're likely to pass the examination and you're assigned to Boston? If he smiles, okay? If he is listening to you, if he is laughing, most likely you have a tendency to get a good grade in the examination. But if in the first place he's not paying attention, then that is your clue that you're likely to fail. Now, what is one thing that I've noticed about Mr. Boston? He likes sophisticated English, and he wants you to be a blabbermouth. What do we mean when we say blabbermouth? Just keep on talking. Be the most talkative person that you can be if you're assigned to Boston. Okay? Now, what about as an example of a question that he asked? If you look at the first page of the handout, you will see here some weird questions, and then under which you're going to see the topics and the specific questions that this examiner asked in the past. Now, please do not think that only these questions were asked by that examiner, because most likely all the questions on this handout are asked by all examiners. It's just that I placed these under this specific examiner because at one time in the past, I had a student who was asked these questions. Okay? Now, what about an example of this weird question? What can you say about sea landscape, and what is your idea of exploration? So this is how you're supposed to answer if you're assigned to Mr. Boston, okay? Of course, I'm sure the examiner will not allow you to speak for this long, but I'll make my answer long for you to have a lot of ideas, okay? By the way, as I have mentioned, of all my classes, this is the only one which is not structured. So if I speak too fast already, call my attention, okay? Or, if in case you're taking notes, do not write word for word. Just get the main gist, okay? Now let us begin with what can you say about sea landscape? This is how I'm going to answer the question. Well, sir, to be honest with you, there are a lot of terms that people have attempted to define, and yet their definitions can only come close to such. Well, sea landscape is even a term that you cannot find in the dictionary. You still have to search over the internet, or on the internet, what sea landscape is. Well, I think the definition of this will depend on the person, depending on the experiences of the person with the sea landscape. Well, if I'll be asked what sea landscape is, I think my idea is what I get to see underneath the ocean, the beauty under the sea. Well, we are so lucky that we live in the Philippines and that there are a lot of sea landscapes here. In northern Luzon in particular, the coastal areas have plenty of sea landscapes. And it's such a good thing to dive, for you to see the beauty of the schools of fishes, the corals. Well, I just find it quite funny that I am a Filipino, but I remain a foreigner in my own land. Because I've never seen any sea landscapes for myself, knowing that, number one, this is actually an expensive activity to do. This is an experience not for the poor people, but usually for the rich class who can afford. At the same time, I don't get to have plenty of time for me to try visiting these sea landscapes. Well, I hope in the future I'll try visiting one. Well, how come I have an idea of sea landscape even if I've not seen one? Well, the good thing is there is television. I remember when I was younger, I would usually have access to the National Geographic or the Discovery Channel or the Animal Planet, the Animal Kingdom. I get to see a lot of sea landscapes and thanks to television. Well, that's actually my first version. I also have a picture in mind of the animated versions, like Little Mermaid or Nemo. Little Mermaid presents characters that are not for real, but Nemo, on the other hand, presents those that are really for real. Now, one thing that I also have in mind when we talk of sea landscapes is this aquarium, because it presents an imitation, a mimicry of what is seen underneath. Well, I recall when I was younger, I would usually watch television. And while I'm scanning for channels at Sky Cable, I saw this one channel showing an aquarium with plenty of fish inside this. Well, I thought it was nonsense of that person to do that. Who would, in his right or her state of mind, would place something like that on television? But because I was so naive, gullible, and impressionable then. So now that when I grew old, I simply noticed that there is something good when you get to see fish inside the aquarium or when you get to see the sea landscape. That's because it provides a therapeutic stress and it relieves a therapeutic relief and it relaxes the tension of a person. That is why at the end of a busy day, after teaching from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., I would usually go to my aquarium and talk to my fishes and I'd give them food. They remind me of the mundane things in life because at the end of a busy day, they're just waiting for you to feed them. Well, that is perhaps my first idea of sea landscape. Another is while I'm walking along the seashore and I get to feel the cool breeze and I get to see my footprints on the sand while I'm walking. I get to contemplate on the things I've done in the past and I get to reflect on the things that I'm doing in the future. So I think for meditation purposes, sea landscape would provide a very good venue. Well, another is when I encounter a lot of artists, they would use the sea landscape as a good object, good subject for photography, or they would use it as another material for still life. Well, other people in using sea landscape would use this for monetary purposes or commercial reasons. Like there are some restaurants along the bay or near the seashore. That is of course for people to have an idea of a different perspective of eating, not really in commercial places, but one in which the person is eating seafood by the bay. So perhaps people have a lot of ideas of sea landscapes in mind. But there's one thing for sure. I want to see a sea landscape for myself in the near future. That is how you're expected to answer, okay? You just have to keep on talking, okay? Be a blabbermouth in the speaking component, okay? So that is how you're expected to answer if you're assigned to Mr. Boston. Tayo lang natanggap ng Irish expression. Pumapasok sa mata. Tayo ng kabaklaan. Okay, so that sea landscape, may nakuha naman? Ideas ang importante. Listen to how I talk. If you notice, it's conversational, it's casual, it doesn't sound scripted. Okay? Now, may kamay pa. Pag magtuturo ako yung kamay. Tayo lang.